Hi. Hooray. All right, everybody. Welcome to the Weekly Sync. I'm super excited to see the demos today, to see all of the amazing work that you did over the past week. So today it's going to be a little bit different. So we'll have demos. Katya's not here today. She's not feeling well, and she won't be here today. And is also not going to be part of Collab Lab this coming week. She just needs that time to rest and recover. So it'll be the three of you. So part of what we'll do today is talk about how you'd like to approach that for the week. Like, do you want to group together as a group of three or tackle things individually? But we'll talk about it. So we'll do demos. We will do like a story splitting exercise on the very next issue. If we have time, we'll go back and revisit an issue that we've already done, a story that we've already done, to see how we might split that story as well. And then, and then we'll take, basically at the same time, we're going to be looking at the board and seeing what's going on for this coming week. Okie dokie. All right, so who would like to demo first?
I'll go for it.
Cool.
I'm ready to go.
I have the project pulled up, Jessica, if you need people to share or do whatever while you talk, or it's totally up to you.
I'll go for it.
Awesome.
I have stuff pulled up on my computer, and anybody can jump in at any time if they feel that it's helpful. So
awesome.
All right. Let's get set up. All right, so I'm going to, just a minute, sorry. All right, let's start here. So this past week, Katya and I did number 11, allow users to tap map pins for more information. So pretty straightforward. We just want to be able to allow a user to tap on a map pin so that they can learn more about the location. So we already have the pins coming up on the map, which was great. We did have to make a decision about how we wanted to display that info. Here it does mention possibly using a user or an info window. But then a little farther down, it did, the story did mention possibly to consider accessibility as well, and that an info window might not work the way that we would like for it. So ultimately, we just needed to be able to display the info that was already showing up on the list view, the name of the location, description, thumbnail, if one is available, distance from the map center, and then a link to the place on Wikipedia. So going into what we decided to do to display that information is using Reach UI. It is a nice little modal / dialogue that does lend itself to be accessible. So we decided to go with that. Going into the code, so using Reach meant that we just had to add a little dependency there. So we did that. Within the app CSS, just added a little bit of extra CSS in there. One of the things to note for anything future is that when using that dialog from Reach UI, to be able to access, to be able to modify with it, we want to use that data reach dialog overlay in the documents here or the documentation for Reach. If you scroll down a little bit on here, it does talk about CSS selectors and a styling guide as well. So something to just kind of consider for potential future use. Going back into our code, it's pretty straightforward. We created a close icon component with just a little SVG for the upper corner. Created a dialog body so that we can actually display the information that we're required to display when a user does click on the pin. So again, pretty self-explanatory with how the code works here. We have our little spot here for the button, for the close icon, and then to be able to display the information, we have that here from 24 on down. I feel like I'm kind of scanning over stuff, so if I need to go into any detail, just holler. But other than that, then in the already existing map component, we just went ahead and we added that dialog into the imports, and made it renderable. Like I said, I feel like it was pretty self-explanatory with the code, and I know there was a few discussions that occurred that were able to be resolved, it appeared. Oh, and then the final one too, within the pin that was already existing, did add a little bit of code to make it accessible. Turns out there might be a better way to do it, but I did have to have an on-click and a non-key press for on-click. If this one was omitted, then the user couldn't click around and actually use their mouse. They could only use keyboard. So other than that, here we go, and you can just now click on an icon and we get this lovely little dialog. We can close it up. If it doesn't have an icon, it just has this little generic one. You can always click more. And ta-da, there we go. And we can read all about it on Wikipedia. So I think that's everything. Any questions or additions?
Do you want to talk about, why don't you mention the accessibility issue that we noticed at first and what you did to get around that with the Reach UI prop for that modal?
Yeah, let's hate when there's that little bar up there. There we go. So are you talking about when there was that aria hidden and then changing that up, or
Okay, so Reach UI, their dialogue has built in that it will close automatically. You don't have to add any extra code really to get it to close on escape or to close when clicking outside of the modal.
oh, that's right. Okay. Shoot, you know what? You might actually have to point it out to me because that was one of the pieces that I know that Katya focused on.
Oh, gotcha. So it's right there.
It is
on
this
the
section here, yeah.
dialogue. Yep. So Reach has a prop called on dismiss. That just needs to be handled. Whatever close function that you've written, which you've written a handle close function, that just needs to be passed to the on dismiss prop. And then
That's right.
Reach takes care of all of the magic for you.
That's right.
Yep.
Thank you.
So just passing that close handler to the on dismiss prop enables Reach. So you can click escape, or you can click or tap outside of the modal. Like if you're on your mobile device, you can tap outside of the modal and it'll close automatically for you. Cool. Yeah, Reach is really great, and they have
yeah.
People will talk about tab trapping in a modal. So let's say, for example, I'm using my keyboard to get around, which I do a lot actually, because my right wrist gets so tired all of the time from development. Like I'll tab around, and if I'm inside of a modal, I want my tabbing to be only trapped within that modal. I don't want it to tab outside of the modal. So Reach has built in that automatic tab trapping. You don't have to write any extra code for that, which is really, really nice.
Very slick. Yeah. Oh, and another part too, regarding the this particular story, something that Lauren had mentioned was since if you are using your keyboard and you get into the map, you have to tab through every single pin before you can actually reach the nav bar. So Lauren had suggested to create another PR just to be able to add a button for a user to be able to skip content. So I went ahead and wrote that up. Haven't created or haven't completed it yet, but it is sitting there waiting to be done. So that'll be
Yeah.
available.
That's really awesome, because then they'll be able to just tab, it'll open up this skip link thing. You can click on that and skip down to the navigation, like if they don't want to be bothered to tab through all of those pins on the map.
Yeah, especially when there's like 60 on there. Yeah,
Yeah.
that'll be good. So yeah.
How did you find out about Reach UI? Sorry.
We just kind of we both did some Googling before we met up. It was one of the things on my list. It actually wasn't at the top of my list, but Katya has a developer friend that that she's been doing some pair programming with, and this particular person had said that Reach worked really well, so we went with it.
Nice. Yeah. What other questions do people have?
I don't have any questions, but I haven't seen this app in a couple weeks since I didn't come last week, and it's looking amazing. Like, this is super impressive how quickly it came together. I wouldn't expect it to look like this until like much later on in the project. Again, this is my first experience with this project, but I'm like blown away. This project is genuinely advanced. So nice job, everyone. This is fantastic.
Yeah, it looks so polished already. It really looks polished.
And every week it feels really gratifying, whatever ends up getting completed, because you realize how, like, I mean, I feel like Katya and I got the easier one this week for sure. So once I saw what Alejandro and Megan's contribution did, being able to move around, I was just like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. And I can only imagine how much work that was. So how's that for a intro into you guys?
Perfect. It's a nice little transition. Awesome. All right, Megan and Alejandro. Nice work.
I guess I'll start and just talk about what we were doing and share my screen. So our issue seemed very simple and straightforward, as like allowing a user to drag the map and generate new locations based on where the map has been dragged to. So there weren't a lot of like extra details in there, but this turned out to be quite a bit of a task. So as you can see, we have the map. One thing I have noticed as we drag, and this is, I don't know if I should file something for this, but you drag and wait, and then your new locations show up. The pins are integrated already since we've merged into main, but the new locations also affect the list. So the list and the map feature change at the same time, which was quite a bit of like refactoring for Alejandro. We'll talk about this since without him, I would be completely lost. Upping the context and data, having two different contexts for centering and the location data to be able to pass down to both the list and the map at the same time. The only thing I'm noticing is that as you drag it, we have a feature to stop the API call so that it doesn't make multiple API calls at the same time. But as you drag, it refreshes. Like if I want to go all the way to Portland, it will take me quite a while to figure that out because it refreshes so quickly. And some of that I do wonder if it's related to, there's so many events that happen when you're dragging. There's like map center change. Like if you just look at the events issue, if you drag through here, you can see the bounds change, center change, drag end. So I wonder if there's something that we could write with like a drag start and drag end that could satisfy that, but so I'm open to suggestions for that. Yeah, there was this was a bit out of my reach of work too. Like Alejandro is very talented, and we went so fast. And I know it was quite confusing, and I really thank you for taking the time to write out a lot of the changes that we did through this. And maybe in the future, we should have like a functionality first and then maybe make a new PR for refactoring. Just because there's so many changes that I know coming on as like another team, it might be hard to figure out what happened and what got passed down and how we've changed some of the data points. But yeah, I will pass over to Alejandro to talk about the code.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Let me share my screen. Okay. Well, this task for this week it was very hard for us, and I would like to explain what decisions took. We first the job with the AppJS because we need to share the center map, the map center point with other with all the our app, and we create two contexts, the map center context and the location context. The purpose, for example, the context map. Our goal for this context is get to the default center first and help us with we need to change the map when we are dragging for the map, and we create the states, and we create the new center map, the property and the method, and create a context for the simple context with the map center. The other context we refactor with Megan is the locations. Before it's called collect the search results, but I think it's much better and most clear with the rename for the locations, because we get the location with the latitude and longitude, and I we did some change with the custom hook, the locations. I try to avoid with call to some API take a long time. We add the cleanup method, and Lauren suggests we can use the Abort Controller. It's new for me. I didn't use before. I haven't used before, and it's very helpful because we create the controller and signer, and the signer is the way when how we can identify what fetch it's calling, and how how we can abort this fetch. And the logic is the similar previous code. Is the pass the parameters latitude and longitude and call to the API build with Andrew, and the same we return the data, set the locations with the pages. We receive the locations and status. And this context is very important because we call one time with the all our app, because it's the context, and we move for other pages is we can get the information about the map center current or the location. Other change we did, it's about the pages. We try to improve our project structure. We separate with the pages folder and the components, and try to create a component map, for example, in the insulate component, only render for the map, and the map page is very simple because we return the value center locations, and we pass in the component map locations what is the default center and what is the new center when we are dragging with the map. More changes with this, and I think that really important when we visit the component map, we discover the event drag end. When you dragging and you stop with the dragging, the event called is drag end, and we stop. We create the new function. This is handle center move. The event receive the new center with the latitude and longitude, and we change the center map. And when you call very so fast with the move, and we try to a little interruption maybe, or stop 1 second, and we pass 1 second and call to the the API, because the use locations is depends with the latitude and longitude. If change the latitude and longitude, call again the API, call to the locations, update with the new location is returned, locations pass with the other or all up, and we receive the change in the map, the locations, and the component location is a location. And we can share the locations in all the pages. And I think it's our work with Megan, and thank you for your attention.
Woo! That is a lot. That was just a ton of work. Really, so
That was
Alejandro,
incredible.
it was a ton. I want to say, Alejandro, I know part of why you wanted to join the advanced project was to like have more practice in English, and you're just doing an amazing job. Like that was a super challenging technical explanation to get across. And that was great. Very nice work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Of course. Oh my gosh. So, okay, first of all, I'm super excited that you all tried that new abort controller thing. I think that it was a great solution for it. I mean, I had suggested it, but I had never tried it myself. But you really made it work. I also really liked, at first I was thinking, oh, why not just have one context and have the map center and the locations all in one context? But I do like separating out the context. I think it makes it really clear. And then that that file that has the context in it doesn't grow to be just enormous. Yeah, really well done. And Megan, I think to your point too, maybe it would have been a good idea to like do the functionality first, and then do maybe the refactor and refinement of the files in a separate PR. That maybe, yeah, maybe that could have happened too. But overall, I think that you both really just got this one super, super good.
I guess I'm just like curious if y'all have strategies for getting lost in the weeds, because I think for some of the things we tried a few things, like first with caching the API call. And then once you start changing certain functionality or refactoring, you have to also update the rest of the files that use that context or function, but then also remember when you change that again to try something new, like where all of this, where is it all connected? Like,
Yeah.
do y'all have particular strategies for that, or do you just like, are you very meticulous about how you track what you're doing?
Anyone have any things that they like to do? I like to, if maybe I'm not entirely sure what my path is going to be. I mean, I try to think about the path pretty hard before I start coding, and I try to write down the steps that I know, like these are the things that I know need to happen. I know how to do this part. I know how to do this part. I don't know how to do this part. So maybe I'll spend more time researching it. And let's say that I have two options. I might create two different branches to try out those two different things. Another thing is that I use VS Code Git Lens, which is a really helpful plugin for my VS Code to help me easily see, like right in my editor, what the changes that I've made are. That one really helps me. Here, I'll just type it in here and I'll share it out later, but maybe everyone's using this plugin already. It's called Git Lens. It's really helpful for me to see what changes that I've made already. And then sometimes like I'll get going on a path and I'll run into, like just hit a wall and I know that this isn't the right path. I'll just blow everything away. So you can do that by doing git checkout -- dot. Here, I'll type it in Slack too. And that just gets rid of all of the changes that I've made. Goodbye. I know this isn't the right path. Right, I'll just run that and then start fresh, right? So I'll do that, or you can also stash your changes. I just prefer doing git checkout -- dot. How about you, Stacy? Do you have any particular strategies?
I don't have any particular strategies, but this is where I think the power of pair programming and mob programming really comes into play, because when you can get other eyes on it, you can course correct a lot more quickly. So on my team at work, we spend a lot of time together pair programming, and often we don't even get to the point where we spun our wheels too long because we're together so often that it's really easy to be like, wait a minute, that seems a little off. And it's not just like you would expect, like it's not just senior engineers telling like earlier career engineers like this seems off. A lot of times it's actually the opposite direction, where the more senior level engineers are like coming up with some really complex thing and other people are like, wait a minute, I don't think this needs to be so complex. So it's like, I would say get your code in front of other people as often as you can. Like as often as somebody's willing to look at it, do that, because again, it just gives you more insight, puts more eyes and experiences on what you're working for, and keeps you focused too. Because a lot of times I'll notice people start to sort of stray from like, like how we're always like, meet the acceptance criteria and only the acceptance criteria. And you start being like, oh, well, while we're doing this, we can also restructure the files, or we can also do all these other things. And it's like, great, you can do that, but like time is money, like in business, right? So you want to try and like do what is being asked explicitly as quickly as you can. And then like Lauren was saying, take those other changes, put them in a different PR for another time. But yeah, working together, getting eyes on it, and just refocusing yourself when you need to.
Yeah, that's a super good point. Like more brains looking at something is better than one brain. Yes, absolutely. Or yeah, and if I was working like at my old job, if I were working with a more senior engineer and maybe somebody would be like, oh yeah, let's try this, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, baby steps. We are doing baby steps.
Exactly that.
These things, we're going to do these things, and then we can think about those things later. That's not what we're doing right now.
Exactly. And it's like more eyes and more brains on it is important, but also because each of you knows something different about this code base. So you might be working on something and Alejandro's like, oh wait, like don't do that because this thing over here that you've never seen that I just happen to know about. Whereas you might have just been spinning your wheels not even knowing that existed. So teamwork is great. That's the moral of my story.
Well, and what you were saying too, Stacy, I think, and Lauren as well, just sticking with what the PR says so that you don't get burnt out. Because I imagine that's the fastest way to get burnt out is by going too far beyond repeatedly with what the ultimate task is to do.
Yep.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Okay.
That totally makes sense. Thank y'all for that. I did notice a thing too of like, and I'm probably speaking out of, I don't know if this is true for everybody else, but even something as simple, like I remember working with Katya on the pins dropping in, and because the AC said the pins should just flow in, Katya took that more literally of like, oh, we've got to add an animation. And so that ended up being like a lot of extra work, which it's cool. It's already there, so we don't have to do it later. But that I think for sometimes like I know as myself forget like language that I use might not be clear and implicit for someone who's English isn't the first language.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And it's like, it's just a really good reminder to like be really vocal and check in and get clarity like constantly. A lot of times, one thing I'll find in my day job is that a product manager writes the ticket and they don't quite know what is possible and what is not possible given the tools that we have access to. And so it's really important for like Lauren was saying, go through and make all your notes about what your approach is going to be for each piece of the puzzle and have like a pending questions bullet under each of those steps where you can like, okay, let's go back and ask for clarification on this thing. Or, you know, like you can even like cut scope there. So if you were like, I know this says flow, but we're actually not going to have time to do that. So let's cut that from this and we can add a new ticket to do that later on or whatever it might be. But just be really loud about it. Yeah. And check in and get clarification because you don't know what the person who wrote the ticket thinks unless you wrote the ticket. That's a good call.
And I know I tend to take things pretty literally generally. So if I had read a ticket that said flow in, I would have been leaning towards, oh, they have to flow in? Okay. And I would have really, I just know that about myself that I tend to take things literally all across the board. So it's what you're all saying is really good to be able to be vocal with other people and just be like, okay, does it really need to be taken that literally or not? And sometimes it will and sometimes it won't.
Words are super important too. Like, and again, this goes back to like the person writing the ticket doesn't know what you know about your project. And so like one struggle that I was like really fighting a couple weeks ago was that the product manager kept saying like a specific word. He was saying use cases, use cases, use cases. And he meant something totally different than what I meant because we have an actual thing like technically called use cases and it wasn't quite exactly what they were referring to. So there was like a misalignment on what we were even meaning by the same words. So
yeah,
talk it out for sure.
Good to know.
Nice. Awesome. Good conversation. Oh, I'm so excited about this app. It is so, so good and polished, and you've really set yourselves up for success going forward. So I'm super excited. So what do I want the next thing? What should we do next? Should we do story splitting next? And then we can talk about how we want to group for this coming week. How does that sound?
I like that.
Okay, sounds good. Let me share my screen. Hardest part being remote team, sharing your screen on Zoom. Oh, okay. So let's see. I'm not going to go over the control chart. Just know that we're at about the same cadence that we've been. It's kind of nice that we have a little bit more. We have a little bit more data. So this blue shaded area shows the standard deviation, and that's narrowing a little bit. So that means that our data is just a little bit more accurate the more data points we gather. But we're at about the same average, about 5-day average, which I think, I think things are going well. We're well on track to complete the project. We're in really good shape, so no worries there. I think everyone's really just done a super great job. Okay, so what is our next? Okay, so this is our next epic, which is render nearby places based on the user's choice of location. There are two different, oh gosh, stop. There are two different stories in this epic. The first is TCL 30-13. So this is the one that I made the video about last week, right? So this is the user sharing their location. So now I should be able to, at the end of this, I should be able to take my mobile device for a walk with me, and the pins should update depending on what my location is, okay? So as a user, I want the map to show pins near my location so that I can discover interesting things around me, is this particular user story. So let's just go through this first, and then maybe we can talk about how we could break this story down into more than one chunk that might make it easier to complete this story in the long run. So the assumption is that the user is on a device with location services enabled. This story allows the app to follow the user, like on a walk or on a bike trip, as they move around, automatically showing new places as their location updates. We already know that that is complete. SME stands for subject matter experts, by the way. Your mentors can help if you get stuck, but you should probably start by getting familiar with the browser's geolocation API. In particular, you're going to want to look at navigator.geolocation.watch position, which seems it's right, that's going to watch where that user is on the map, and navigator.geolocation.clearwatch. So watching a user's position using watch position can be noisy, both initially as the device dials in on their location accuracy, but also if the user is moving at a high rate of speed. So if you think about, I don't know if anyone ever played Pokemon Go, right? And you'd have your phone in the car and you were the passenger in the car, because not when you're the driver, but when you're the passenger in the car and you have Pokemon Go going, you could never like catch the Pokemon because you're moving too fast. Think of the Pokemon Go app in your car. So if you're moving at a high rate of speed in a moving car, this can cause the app to stack up multiple calls to the API. We've already dealt with this situation this past week. So that leads to unpredictable behavior. So this is a good time to ensure that we are only ever making one API call at a time. In other words, we wait for any outstanding API call to return or timeout before making the next one, or cancel it, right? If you're gonna make a new API call, you can cancel the previous one, which is kind of the approach that we just took. The acceptance criteria: 1, provide a prompt within the app, for example, a button for the user to tap or click to start sharing their location. The browser will most likely prompt the user to accept or not sharing of their device location with the app. If the user accepts, we use the returned location to set the center of the map. So right now, like Paris is our center, right? If I share my location, it's going to all of a sudden default to the center would be Blaine, Minnesota, right? We want to show the user as a dot or other marker on the map. We want to fetch new pins based on the new center, and then show the user a new prompt to stop sharing their location. We will handle the case where the user actually stops sharing their location in this story, TCL 20-22. So we don't have to, for this particular piece of functionality, we don't have to worry about the user wanting to stop sharing their location. If the user does not accept the sharing of their location, then we leave the map in whatever is its last good state, and then we leave the prompt to share their location active. What questions do people have so far, like talking about those acceptance criteria?
This is me being literal thing right here, I think. So with that end there, if the user does not accept, we leave the prompt to share their location active, meaning we leave it available for them, or we have it go away.
Yeah, I think the first thing that you said. So let's say that there is a button somewhere on the screen that says like share location. If they say, nope, no way, then I think what this means is leave the button there that says share location, like in case they change their mind.
Cool.
That's what I interpret that as. And then let's say I don't agree to share my location. We should leave it as is, like in Paris, as its default location. Again, what other questions? I'm sorry, I was just going on.
I'm sorry, I have a little question about when we don't share our location. And should we disappear for the user marker in the map when you disable for the location?
Oh, yeah. I wonder, that is a good question too. Let's see. So let's see, and another question, should we even show a user marker at all if they haven't shared their location? Do you know what I mean? So let's say when the app first loads in Paris and I haven't shared my location, maybe there shouldn't even be the user icon there at all. Because that's not really where I am.
If I'm recalling correctly, when I've used Google Maps without sharing my location, I think there's no pin showing any assumed location.
Okay, so let's read this again. So
I'd have to try again and see.
Sure. Let's see. So here it says, if the user accepts, we use the returned location to set the center, show the user as a dot or other. So that's, I guess it says right here, if the user accepts, we show them as a dot or something. Otherwise, I think that we don't. What do you guys think? Or what do you all think? Sorry, try not to say guys.
I think not having, I think if they do not accept, then not having a pin or not having a dot on the map for the user is a good idea. I'm not sure how that'll work with coding, with like how the actual code breaks down, but for user experience, that makes sense to me.
Alejandro, you wanted to say something else.
And just I suggest maybe when you click with the button with the share location, you display or show with the user marker, and you disable both disappear the marker and I have another question because when you mentioned about the last good state, I'm not sure, but we need should we need to save the last center map in like local storage with the change with the default center map, for example?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know that we need to. I think that we just need to keep it as, my hunch is that you'll just need to keep it the way that it's set up, like with the location, like the map center context and the locations context. And then it just won't, like, let's say that I've shared my location, I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota, but then I decide to stop sharing my location. The map should stay wherever it last was. So it'll stay in my Minneapolis, Minnesota location. It won't go back to Paris.
For me, I understood it, the Minneapolis, the last center map, and stay with the same place, the last one.
Yeah, that's what I think too. That's what I think too. So this particular story has there's a lot to it. And we have a lot of questions about it. And it seems like there are a lot of different ways to handle things. So I wonder, like, given the fact that we have a lot of questions and there seem to be a lot of different pieces to it, how we could break this down into smaller stories. So I'm going to refresh your memory about how we can break down a story, starting with the original user story. So as a user, I want the map to show pins near my location so that I can discover interesting things around me. We've already discovered there's a lot to it, right? There are a lot of different things that we need to do to complete this entire story. So one way to break down stories into smaller stories is to take this second, I want the map to show pins near my location, and move that to the final result. So we want a story that reads like this. I'm going to type it out in Slack. So am I in the right bridge? Yes. So it's going to be, as a user, I want something, 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 so that the map shows pins near my location, right? So I'm taking this second piece and moving it to kind of the result. So that part. So I'm going to post this in Slack. So we want to create maybe more than one story that reads like this. Let me move this over. As a user, I want something so that the map shows pins near my location. Does that make sense? Is this ringing a bell from our learning module on story splitting a little bit? So what are the things that we need to do? What's the first thing that a user needs to do when they go to the app and they haven't shared their location?
Want an option to give the map my location.
Yep, exactly. So I'm just going to write this down. I should have put up a piece of paper here, but so we want an option for the user to share their location, right? So maybe that could be a story. So as a user, I want to see a button I want to be able to click a button or tap a button on the screen to share my location so that the map can show pins near my location. Right? So that would be just a piece of it. And then that would kind of limit that functionality to like show the button. And when the user clicks it, then the watching the position is enabled. Does that seem like a good story?
Yeah, that sounds like a very, it seems much more doable than like
Then
it's a
the
good
whole
piece.
thing.
Yeah,
Right?
that sounds like a good piece.
Yeah, it feels more manageable to me too. Alejandro, what do you think?
I think it's okay for me. I have a other suggestion. I like to the show with the option,
Mm-hmm.
but I would like to change a little with the result. Maybe I think the some message. I would like as a user I want to see an option with the current location so that I can show what I share or not my location. Maybe at the top with the title of the button, some the message with the it's active or not active with the location. And in another task or another story, you use the button, but you change with the show the pins with the current. I try to separate two stories, but it's my suggestion.
Can you will you type out that first story in Slack that as a user part? Cool. Megan, what are you thinking?
That makes sense to me, because that's the first functionality we have to grab the location at all. Because we can't do the rest of it without that, right?
Right. Yep. All right. Let's see what Alejandro is typing. And then like the other thing to think about when you're story splitting, sometimes a story can't be broken down into an actual like more user stories, but it can be broken down into subtasks or tasks. So just as a reminder, a subtask or a task is something that needs to be done. It's like a checklist on the work that you need to do, but it's really hard to define in terms of a user. Do you know what I mean? Like as a user, I want the app to make an API call. That's maybe not a great user story, but it's definitely a task that needs to be done. Okay, so let me read what Alejandro said here. As a user, I want to show share my location. I want the app to show share my location option so that I display a message, active or inactive. Okay, and then this is the second story. Is that right, Alejandro? This next line.
Yes, it's another story.
Okay, and then as a user, I want to show share my location option so that I rendered pins around me. Yes. All right. What does everybody think about that?
Those seem, I like that layout too. It seems really manageable. To having those two different stories.
That makes sense to me too. And then those both allow subtasks for some of the refinement details.
Yep. What I would say is let's see, as a user, I want blah. I think the second part, the I want, needs to be different in different stories, unless it's a task. If it's a task, it's a task. And we're not then we don't write it in terms of the user. So as a user, I want something to be able to do something else, right? And those should be, the I want part should be different, I think. But what's another way? So what's a way we could think about this? So as a user, we know we need to, can you all see me typing? No, you can't see me. Can you see me typing in Slack? We need to,
Yes.
okay, cool. So we need to, so this is kind of task oriented. We need to show a button that allows user to share their location, right? We need to do that. We then, oops, whoops. Let's see. Good. Once they share their location, we need to, oh my gosh, it's almost noon. Once they share their location, we need to then be able to show pins for the shared location. And we need to follow them around to their new location. And if they don't share, we need to keep showing the most recent state. So again, in this particular story, we're not going to be handling the user stopping of sharing their location. It's either like they share their location, or if they don't share their location, it should just stay at Paris. So we don't need to really think right now about them stopping sharing their location, only allowing or not allowing. So let me enter this. Then I don't know that it needs to be 4 separate tickets, but maybe one story that does the allowing or not allowing the location sharing, and one story that then, I'm assuming this part, that once we're sharing that location, we get the user's latitude and longitude. The app is pretty much set up to be able to render those pins at that new place, at that new latitude and longitude. It's just the getting that latitude and longitude. And then we need to follow them around. So I feel like these 2 pieces, number 2 and 3, are kind of a piece, can be put together. What do you think? What are your thoughts?
Sorry, I think we can define function with the display with the marker, the user marker, or it's included with the the second step.
Oh yeah, we could add another one in there. Is that what you're saying, that shows the marker?
Just the 5 step.
Yep. We need to show a user marker if their location is shared, right? Yep.
Yes.
Yep, I think that's a good one too. I think that's a good separate piece. So you could do something like, as a user, I want to see where I am. I want to see some kind of marker on the map that shows where I am so that I can see locations that are around me, right? Something like that. I like that. Okay, so these are our ideas. And I think this is really good. Like, this is a good practice to be able to break down stories into smaller, more manageable chunks. We also need to talk about how you'd like to work together, the three of you, for the coming week. So we could do it, I guess, there are different ways we could do it. We could have everybody work together, the three of you work together. We could have people work separately. We could have one person kind of tag teaming in and out. My suggestion is to have all three of you work together. I think that would be more fun. And I think that you'll accomplish more. Three is can be a challenging number maybe to work with, but I think you'll have more success if the three of you work together. What do y'all think?
I'd like to try having the three of us working together, since that's not a setup I've done before, and now's a good time to experience that and see what it's like. So
Yep.
I'm for it.
Cool. Megan, what do you think?
That works for me. I think too, our timelines aren't so drastically different, so it's not as difficult.
Yep. I agree. Alejandro, how do you feel about that?
Yes, I feel it's a good opportunity with learn with other people, more people, because we used when we did the pre-programming, we learn, but if we work with a team, I think the knowledge is a lot, I think, and I think I learn.
Agreed. Okay, so here is my idea for the week. And you can change this up, but I think as a part of this week, that the three of you should work on breaking down this big story into the user stories that you'd like to accomplish. And they might not all get done this week. And just know that if or when they don't all get done this week, it doesn't mean that you won't finish the application. Like, you're all in great shape. You've made a ton of progress. There's plenty of time. So don't even worry about that part. But I think as part of the work this week, that the three of you can work together to split the stories. We already have a good start. Don't be afraid of Jira. It's really fine. You won't break Jira. Jira is just kind of not very intuitive all of the time. But don't worry about breaking Jira or making stories in the wrong space, anything at all. So break down the stories and then work together to, like, I would start with whatever story is the first, like, render a button to share the user's location. And then you can decide, like, is this a story or is this a subtask? And it can include a mix of all of those things.
I totally want to echo that, like, story subtask thing, because once you get your stories broken down, be really diligent about actually putting subtasks in there, because there are three of you working on each of these stories. There might be times when you're not available to mob program on this or program all together. And if you have those broken down really well, it's much easier for you to coordinate to say, okay, Jessica's going to take this first subtask. When she's done with it, she's going to post in the channel. Megan's going to take over with the second one. She's going to update us in the channel. Alejandra's going to take over with the third one. The more, like, narrow you can get with those subtasks, the easier it's going to be to divide and conquer if you need to. And just stay organized about where exactly you are in the process. So definitely take good time to think through, like Lauren was saying, what each step of each step is going to take to build the thing that you're building.
I like that. Thank you. That's helpful.
And it allows you, like, again, when you start writing these things down and actually thinking through it, and you're forced to like put your fingers to the keys and write out what you're doing, that's when like questions start to creep up. That's when you can start clarifying with, you know, Lauren and Andrew about like, what does this actually mean? So taking significant time to plan is never a bad idea before jumping into like code.
For sure. Woo. This will be a fun one. This is
a big one.
Super advanced skill, breaking down these stories, managing your own processes. Like this is part of what the advanced project is all about. It's like really doing that planning and taking ownership. And I think this will be really, really good. And I think you really enjoy it. But just know that, yeah, Andrew and I are here to support you all week. We will be available to you more than we were last week. So never fear. And then as much as you can, work together, the three of you, to get things done. And know that not completing everything in this story this week will not set you behind, right? You're in good shape. Cool.
This is like, I'm sure y'all talked about this when you talked about story splitting and stuff, but the stuff you're learning here, this like planning piece of the process, is absolutely something that will come up time and time again in technical interviews, in your career, obviously. But when you're going into these interviews, they don't just want to know how you code, they want to know how you can help their business grow and how you can be efficient and how you can work on a team. And this is like gold when it comes to interviewing. So if they ask, how would you approach this? It's like, well, first I would take a look at, you know, the story and split it up and make sure, you know, like talk about all the things you learned about story splitting and all the things that worked for you. And then only when I'm confident and I have most of my questions answered would we jump into coding it, so we don't waste time spinning our wheels, etc. So take time to do this and learn from it and feel comfortable, like Lauren was saying, knowing that you can spend extra time doing these things and you're not going to get behind. It's important stuff.
This is reminding me of a job interview I had years ago, way before doing any coding or anything like that. And they, asked me what my process was for completing a task. And I never had to verbalize it before. And I was just like, I just write it down and do it. And so this working within these stories and the subtasks and all that, this is just a whole nother level of really coming to grips with what is my process and learning how to talk about it, because I never want to be in an interview and have that happen again, because I felt horrible.
Yes. I've been there too.
Cool.
Good.
All right, everybody. I'm going to just write a little thread in Slack in our channel to kind of outline what we talked about and what's going to happen this week. So don't worry about the pairing thread. What I'll create in Slack will kind of outline what we're going to do for the week. And then you can use that to coordinate. Don't be afraid to reach out to me or to Andrew. And I'm excited to see what happens. Very excited.
Really great work, everyone. This is fantastic.
Thank you.
Awesome. Have a good week.
Okay.
Yeah,
See you around. Bye, friends.
Bye,
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.